Alright, hello. This is Evan Mazer for his museum visit paper. So we go in there. So this is my video, Dr. K. So we go into the museum, and the first thing we're introduced to is a whole wall of disability. What is disability, and where exactly did it come from? What are its origins? So they gave us a brief reflection on what disability is and how disabilities have always been witnessed throughout time. Typically, those that were disabled were not in government or didn't have a certain level of intellect. It was typically reflected on socioeconomic status, and we saw this in paintings depicting of people placed in cages in the middle of town squares, or workers in the fields, and it just kind of made you humble with how far disabilities have come, and how terrible they were to these people that were limited, whether it would be with cognitive issues or any sort of physical disability. They would just treat as heathens, or people that just shouldn't be involved in any aspect of normal life. But there were some positive paintings, typically the religious ones. The paintings we saw were of people with angels or certain saints, and all the children that were surrounding them were typically Down syndrome patients. You could tell with their facial features and the way their eyes were just looking up towards the heavens. And this was fairly common, I guess, in religious paintings, which was new to my knowledge, because it was seen that Down syndrome children and people were pure. They essentially had a good conscious mind. They would never actually try to do wrong, try to do evil, and that's why they were viewed as positively as they were in the religious paintings. So I thought that was all very important to reflect upon and see how far disability had come. It was humbling to see that, and to me, almost, especially with the cages, just kind of not scary but so much as what was my train of thought? Video is kind of hard. Not so much as scary, but just different from what I had seen before. Never expected to see something like that. So as we continued on throughout the wall, the gentleman showing us around the museum, we were introduced to a man named Felipe Pinel, or otherwise known as the father of modern psychiatry. And he introduced the idea of moral treatment. So instead of placing these people in cages and removing them from all aspects of life, it was a more humane psychological approach. Doing some further research on my own and listening to what he had said, it's non-violent, and typically the person would go into close contact with the individual in question and just provide close contact. He would listen to them, he would take down notes, and Pinel just kind of viewed retardation versus an illness, and he tried to differentiate the two. His philosophy was, a man who goes insane is kind of like a rich man who lost all of his money. So these people might have been normal at one point in time. They might have just developed this through one traumatic instance, or who knows? That's what his plan was, to find out. And instead of treating them in such a manner that was evil, he decided to take them in and nurture them and just try to. I'm thinking of a better word other than be nice, but that's really kind of what it was. And he had apprentices, one just being Jean, I'm going to destroy this name, Edenine Dominique Esquirol. He was under Pinel, and he also studied madness. Specifically, he spearheaded hallucinations studies and theories about why these people might have been seeing certain things that weren't actually there. He himself actually taught psychiatry, and his major play was that he reformed government and medicine in a way that could help. He spearheaded the idea that medicine needs to be involved with some of these people that are troubled, and it can actually help them with their conditions. He also brought about the idea of asylums, and that's how we have loony houses or madhouses further on along the road in the history of disability, as well as similar to the mental institutions we have today or the dementia care facilities. He kind of spearheaded the idea. Other key factors were Jean-Marc Gaspard Itard, who discovered the Tourette syndrome, and by discovered he probably gave it a name, but he studied it very much so and was a big part in its development and what the knowledge of it that we know today. Again, this was just nice to see how history had come along. Does it really change my opinions of the disabled? No, but it's nice to see that back in the day, well, not nice to see, but it's interesting to see how the views changed throughout about disabilities, how people had no idea what it was, and they weren't even willing to look at it and try to theorize what it was. And it's nice to know that these gentlemen actually stuck with it, brought about new ways to study madness, and made positive changes in order to help the situation overall. It was just nice and humbling to see that history was made with these gentlemen. And then from those guys there, we eventually moved into the almshouses and Dorothy Dix. And again, after looking it over, and I'll just give you a quick thought of who they actually were. Dorothy Dix was an activist for the I can't read that. It's my writing. I can't even read it. Hopefully this isn't too informal, but it's a video. So Dorothy Dix, she was an activist for mental patients and mental asylums. She did most of her work in North Carolina, and also ultimately helped develop the first public mental hospital in Pennsylvania. She was a very interesting lady. I did more research on her, and I remember her from grade school, kind of, because she helped with the World War II and the nursing motions. And it's interesting to see that she was actually very against Irish people and Jews, but she was very interested in mental asylums. It's kind of interesting, but hey, I'm glad that she was able to do that for the movement for mentally handicapped people. So she helped develop the New York State Asylum for Idiots near Albany. She helped the process eventually bring that on, and it was very successful. That was the first one in New York State, and it eventually led to another being built in Syracuse, and this was eventually changed to women, strictly for women, because they didn't want any illegitimate children. What the problem was, they would have these people go into the insane asylums, and the raunchy women would meet with the men, and eventually tax dollars had to go for these illegitimate children. So that's why they've developed an asylum strictly for women, which I absolutely never would have thought of, but it, it's nice to know. I should probably start this